Did you know that happiness is your superpower in business? Often, happiness is seen as something that is a little bit fluffy and doesn't connect to the bottom line, but absolutely is something that is fundamentally important to the success of any organization. And I've got just the person here today to chat with me. So let's get going. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, welcome. So it's episode 30, we were talking earlier on, 35, and that was in 2001, which is
Chris, I can't believe
bonkers.
it.
Bonkers. It's changed a little bit. We're now in studio and done quite a few episodes. It's great to get you here.
Great studio.
And just great to get on the sofa and talk about stuff like this, and particularly the thing around happiness. I was at a conference a few weeks back, and similar conversations around excitement and magic in business.
Yeah.
And these are words you kind of usually associate with serious business.
Yeah.
And happiness is not often something that is not enough seen as being fundamentally serious in business. So before we crack on, tell us a bit about yourself and then we'll get on with the chat.
Cool. So I'm Matt. I always say I started working with animals before I started working with human beings.
Oh yeah.
And I have a theory that animals are better at communicating their emotions than human beings.
Yeah, fair enough.
First time I got to the world of work, I thought, this is a weird place. People don't actually say what they mean.
Yeah.
And so I started out, I studied marketing, then I started out on like a marketing career.
Okay, yeah.
But worked at a well-known media company that was sort of my dream job. And I just got there, it was so toxic.
Really?
And I left ASAP. I didn't really have a plan, but I had some marketing skills. And I just thought, I'll start my own thing. And one of my friends said, I'll do it with you.
Brilliant, love it.
And what was really cool is his notice period was shorter than mine. So I don't know whether I would have ever quit my job because he had to quit his job first to be able to join me, or the other way around, or I can't remember how the notice periods worked. But then, so we agreed to it, and then he quit his job and texted me. He was like, your turn now.
Oh, really?
But I don't know whether if I would have had the confidence to do it if he hadn't. But then once you've committed to something, you've got to follow through, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that over a 10-year period, we built up a company and sold it. But we built it on culture.
Okay.
And we used a Richard Branson quote that your customers don't come first, your employees come first.
100%, yeah.
But we are we're data people, we're geeks essentially. And we'll probably talk about some data in a bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And we were really deep into the data of marketing and customer. But if you really get deep into that stuff, the source of the river always flows back to employee when you follow it. And I realized, and Chris realized, that as we grew our business, we actually enjoyed culture more than we did marketing, which our profession was marketing, but actually the thing that we were enjoying was understanding culture. And then we built this really rubbish internal tool called the Happiness Index.
It's stuck, yeah.
Just to track. It's really basic. Like, I don't know if the podcast works like this, but I can send you the screenshots and maybe we can put them on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But there's a saying in tech, if you're not embarrassed by version 1 of your product, you launch too late. And I can say I'm really embarrassed by version 1 of our product.
Oh, brilliant. That's a Reid Hoffman thing, isn't it?
I think so.
He says that, yeah.
I think that is Reid. It was just terrible, but it just gave us the first glimpses of data around how happy our employees were and how happy our customers were. At that point, we weren't sophisticated enough to be looking at causation of the link. We were just looking at correlation. And for the non-data people, obviously correlation does not equal causation, but we were just trying to understand, is there a kind of a rhythm or connection between how our employees feel and how our customers feel? And that was just journey 1. And then we sold the marketing company. And rather than doing what we should have done, which was we were still relatively young and retiring and having a great time, we took all the money and invested it in a new startup.
Brilliant.
Called the Happiness Index, which is what I'm here to talk to you about.
So from a spreadsheet called the Happiness Index to a business called the Happiness Index.
Our CTO would say it's a bit more than a spreadsheet. I would say a couple of lines of code.
Right. Okay.
I think what's the Irish tech startup that do the financial trade? They transfer money all around the world. They're one of the biggest unicorns, but it's that business essentially a few lines of code.
Yeah.
But it's a unicorn, really well known unicorn. I'll remember it later in the podcast.
Well, you got to be able to build the code, haven't you, in the first place, and have the right vision for it.
Yeah.
So the Happiness Index has been around for
That V1 was probably about 11 to 12 years ago. The company is coming up for 10 years old.
Oh, congrats.
So it was
Brilliant.
sort of like, I don't know what you call it, alpha test, beta tested for a good couple of years. And then we were busy running the marketing agency. So I called best man from my wedding and vice versa and just said, look, we got this idea. People are interested in buying it, but we don't have any time or any money. Would you quit your job? And we'll give you 1/3 of the business and a laptop and a load of people that are interested.
Oh, brilliant.
And he went for it, and he got it up and running whilst we finished our earn out
Okay, yeah, that's good. Nice.
at the business we'd sold to. And then we took about 4 or 5 months off to spend time with children.
Oh, wasn't that during the World Cup in 2018? I think I seem to remember from the book. Yeah,
that
nice.
was like my first day off was like the first day of the World Cup or something like that.
Oh, brilliant. Nice.
And that, I don't know if you remember, that summer was really hot.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I've worked my whole life, including working really young on the farm and stuff. So I've never had a period like that. So yeah, that was brilliant. That's how we got going.
Right. So I read your first book when it came out.
Yeah.
I think I got it about a year after it was published, and had a bit of a read through it again. Freedom to be Happy: The Business Case for Happiness. And you got another book coming out. You decided running your own business, having a family, and running events isn't enough. You did a second book. So tell us a bit about the book.
The first book was self-published. Got some really great advice from another really an author that I respect so much, Geffen Nadin, who's written some great books on well-being. Check him out. He's a real advocate for self-publishing because there's so much control and so on. But after the first one, I'm not an author. I wasn't sure I wanted to write another one. I've got young children. Writing a book, I said this at the time, actually made me unhappy.
Oh, really?
Because
irony.
I've got a day job as well.
Yeah, of course.
So I was doing it all around the edges. But then Wiley contacted me, the publisher, and sort of pitched me why it might be a good idea and what people were interested in. And they obviously come with a bit of support. So I thought, actually, with a bit of support, maybe I can make this work. And when they told me that people were interested in the data, I thought, well, I'm just interpreting the data every day anyway. So it's a job that needs to be done. I'm just going to document it.
Yeah, nice.
So if you work in a SaaS business, you kind of, your brain changes a bit to always think about how is something scalable. This is the geeky mindset that you get. Like, that's why I do my podcast, because it's a scalable conversation. I know that sounds really weird, but you have one conversation that goes out to 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people, but you invested 1 hour of your time. Yeah. And that's the way I looked at the book, is that I basically needed to document what we were doing. I needed to, what we would describe as codify our work, but a normal person would just say, write it down. But we would, as geeks, we would say, we'd codify it. But then it also becomes something that is useful for our employees, for our customers, for our prospects, as well as the market. So that's how I got my head round, from writing a book. Although that was sold well and everything, it personally made me unhappy. But then support from Wiley and being able to link it to my work directly made it possible. And it didn't make me unhappy writing this one.
Oh, good. That's progress. That's good. And what is it? So what's the title of the book?
So there was many creative meetings, long nights of talking about what it could be called, and it was concluded that we would call it the Happiness Index.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Yeah, okay. See what you've done there.
Yeah, because really it is about the data from the Happiness Index, and you can overcomplicate these things, can't you? Yeah. That's why, again, your podcast says exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah. We really wanted to get people to understand that emotions can be really powerful and they're not a negative thing. Yeah. So we just presented our methodology in the way we do stuff and what we've learned from the data. But crucially, I personally am a big fan of not preaching to people about how they should think. Yeah. So I was really a real advocate that the book just says, this is what we've learned. Make of it what you will. Okay. Yeah. Because every week there's like a new great book out and it says, do it this way. And then you get another book and you read it and it's like, do it this way. And then you get another book and you read it and it's like, do it this. And then you're like,
It's true.
which way?
It's like health and fitness and diet and everything, isn't
Yeah.
it? Everyone's got a different
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Probably not watched it, but it's on Disney Plus called Mandalorian. It's like part of the Star Wars
Oh
series.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
They always say, don't they? They always go, this is the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's what a cult does.
Yes,
That is
it's
what
true.
a cult does.
Yeah.
And lots of books are like, this is the way. This is the way till you
Yeah.
believe it. So personally, I feel it's more powerful in this day and age just to release the data and just empower people to be adults and decide what and we'll talk about shortly what it reveals, but
nice.
people can make their own mind up about what to do with it.
Yeah, I like that. It's really nice actually, because there is this danger of kind of evangelizing, being cultish, isn't it? Where actually, if someone's just being told the way to do it, then they're kind of not doing it themselves. They're just following a process without really understanding what it means. And that's particularly dangerous is the wrong word, but it's like that's just misguided when it comes to certainly when it comes to like running a business, leading a business, and making sure your employees are happy. You can go off on a tangent and get it wrong. So having a deep understanding about it through learning through things like your book and your podcast is great.
And all of life's like that. If you take like things like diet, the way 100 people might process carbohydrates might be different.
Yeah.
So if suddenly you've read in a blog post that cutting out carbohydrates is good for you, it might be good for the people in the sample study, but it might not be good for you.
It's true. I'm a big fan of the Zoe program, and I'm on that program, and the podcast is brilliant.
Yeah, I think that is the Zoe, the Happiness Index, 23andMe. There's more information out there to help you make decisions.
Yeah.
But I don't think the information should make the decision for you, and that for me is fundamental, really important differentiation.
From a podcast perspective, how have you integrated like other content, talking about scaling and all that?
Yeah.
How have you integrated it with this book and your first book and your second book?
So for the new book, there's what we want to do is show people what the drivers of happiness are. There's 24 top drivers. So with the Happiness in Humans podcast, what I did is interview an expert on each of them. So it created 24 podcasts, and I start off in the podcast sharing the data with them on that particular section. Then I get the expert to talk about what that could mean. So I'll give you an example. Acknowledgement and recognition, aka Chris, you do a great job on your podcast.
Yeah.
I don't mean that, by the way.
Cheers, thank you. Good man.
That's like a fundamental thing we all need.
Yeah,
like,
true.
if you never actually heard ever again that your podcast was good, you might stop doing it. That's the reality of it.
True.
And I'm not just saying that for camera, it's a good podcast.
Yeah,
now, we all need that. It's actually a human thing, right? But, however, within the data, acknowledgement has the highest standard deviation of all 24 factors. What that means for the non-data people out there is the way that people want to be acknowledged and recognized has the highest variance. So you actually need, what that data suggests is, if you had a team of 5, you should ask them, how, if you do a good job, do you want me to recognize and acknowledge your work? Because I did something that in the book I write about that I regret, which is I publicly recognized you.
Oh, yes.
Which, as I did it, you seemed comfortable. But in the English way, you were like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But not too overboard. But I hope that you didn't see it as a negative.
Yeah.
However, there are some people whose worst nightmare is to be publicly recognized.
Didn't you do something? Was it you? You said you did something in the business.
Yeah.
And you realised actually it was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah. Our CTO.
That's it. Okay. Yeah.
That I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We did what was called a neuroscience upgrade. It was a fundamental upgrade to the platform. Integrated things like neuroscience, AI, and machine learning. Incredible. Probably the best piece of work I've ever seen done. And at a company update, I publicly recognized Matt for that. He hated it.
Huh.
Because by nature, you do a podcast, so you're comfortable discussing stuff in the public domain. I still might have got it wrong. Still might not have been comfortable. But Matt is not that type of person. And even after this, before this goes out, I'll let him know that I mentioned him on here.
Yeah, okay.
To make him feel comfortable. But
nice.
I have his permission to share this story. But what I should have done, I've worked with him for probably 17 years now.
Yeah.
I should have known that, because I do know that. I know what Matt would like for recognition. He'd like to go for a one-on-one coffee with me.
Right. Yeah.
That's how he
Okay.
likes to spend time.
Mm.
Just me and him, and me say that to him. He doesn't want anyone else in the world to know that. He just needs to know that from me.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of how the podcast and everything is used, which is take the data, then share that with some experts and have some conversations around it. So I was lucky enough to be able to hunt down an expert on each section.
Nice. And going to the book you just dropped. Is it so? It's you dropped it at an event, didn't you? You had your official launch. Actually,
Yes.
it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
This is great. Really enjoyed it. And so, tell us a bit about, I suppose, how much data did you have to kind of lean on? Because I know you've done your TED talk,
Yeah.
which is great, and the amount of data points is like fantastic. So tell us a bit about the data in terms of the second book.
Yeah, so it was different sources of data. So the TED Talk, which is 12 million lessons in employee happiness, used 1 million employees and about 12 million data points.
Right.
The book was actually mainly written about a year ago now.
Yeah.
So we had to keep updating the data.
Right, okay.
But from our own data set, we were using different sections, but the overall was about 2 million employees from about 100 countries and about 20 million data points. But we also used a smaller qualitative group. I want to say somewhere between 20 and 30,000. I can't remember the exact number, where we use more qualitative data, like verbatim comments, all anonymous. So we don't know who these people are. But again, all around the world. And then we used external academic research.
Right.
Because I wanted all different starts of it. Like ours is like real-time data live. I wanted the academic rigor of it. So we brought in on all of the 24, because there's now, I can't remember the exact number, but there are hundreds of thousands of studies into this whole area now across the world.
Right.
So I wanted to bring the academic bit in, but I wanted to mix it up because I wanted real-time data for the data people like myself. You need academic rigor because you need external validation. You can't just be marking your own homework.
100%. Yeah.
And I also wanted to bring practitioners in.
Okay.
Because even if you've got the academic research and you've got the real-time data, you still need people that are working on this every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just living up in the clouds of theory land.
It's true.
And that's where the experts come in that we interview and we use that. And then the final element, which we include in the book, is customer insight from our customers.
Okay.
Stuff our customers have learned, stuff that's gone wrong. We don't name the customers in the book, mainly because all of their projects are still ongoing.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're culture change journeys. So it's a curse of what we do. You can go on our website and see what customers we work with, but the level of the detail we're talking about, you can't break the anonymity by talking about it. But you can still see in each section a couple of examples of what customers have been working on.
Nice. I really like that. I look like that balance of kind of your own first party data, but then also the academic rigor to it as well to add to it. But also the kind of non-academic applied learnings and failings, actually. Which is that's what learning is ultimately about, getting things wrong and doing things again, isn't it? So I really like that combination. And what are the not wanting to give away everything in the book, because definitely worth someone picking up and reading it, but what are the kind of the key themes that are coming through if someone is reading it and going, these are the things I want to take away?
It's a good question. I think the top drivers and everything is in there. You won't be surprised by any of it, but by understanding where they sit and the importance of them, it will help you focus. So if we just talk about happiness and we talk about two of the top 4 drivers, 2 of the top 4 drivers at work are psychological safety and positive relationships. Now, positive relationships consistently comes up number 1 in most countries we work in, pretty much every country. I always say pretty much in case there's one that we've just uncovered that doesn't, but it is there.
But hey,
I've always seen it come out number 1. Secondly, psychological safety doesn't come out number 1, but I always believe it's the place to start, because if someone doesn't feel safe, their brain, and it talks about brain systems and brain types in the book, without going too much into that to put the reader off. But if someone's not safe at work, they're going to be in fight, flight, or freeze. So how they go when you do that, you're accessing the instinctive parts of your brain, which means people are not going to be accessing like the emotional parts of the brain where things like creativity sit.
Yeah.
So
True.
you work you're creative essentially when
Yeah.
you look at what you do, Chris.
Yeah.
If you were fearful every day, you wouldn't be able to record this podcast.
It's true. I've got a poster behind me in my office, which is, basically avoiding to be creative. You need to avoid avoid the fear of failure.
Yeah.
And this is we talked about education, all that, which is another topic. But the thing about not forgetting that we are, there was a time when all humans would try things out and make mistakes and not be fussed about it.
Yeah.
But that changes.
Yeah.
So could you mention that? Definitely, I can resonate with that for sure. Yeah. So what? Yeah, let's go back to what other things, what are the kind of key themes?
I think the other theme that we talk about, which I think is an important one to talk on this specifically on this podcast, is the crossroads that we're at as well.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think we went into the pandemic happened, loads of companies were forced by an event to just trust their employees.
Yeah.
For years, people have gone and talked about working from home, all this kind of stuff, and I'm not sure if it'll work. It's A/B test it, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Big event happens, we have no choice. Everyone has to trust their employees. Now, what I'm about to say is not about whether you work for an office or not, because we're in a studio, right? Is this an office? Is this a home? I don't know. So I'm on a lovely sofa.
Yeah.
However, what is happening now, I believe, we're at a crossroads where there are companies that really want to empower people, and there are companies that just simply want to control. And because of technology that is out there, it is way more easier to control people than it's ever been before. And I encourage everyone I bump into, it'd be great if you read my book, but George Orwell, 1984, just reread it. If you've not read it before, go and read it. It's the best thing you could do for yourself, your children. Just have a read of it, because George Orwell pretty much predicts a lot of the stuff that states might go on to do.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that around the world now.
Yeah, good point.
But he doesn't predict what companies can do. And most of us spend more time at work than we do with our families. And all this stuff like tracking keystrokes through to how long someone is away from their desk, how long they spend, you work in a call center, how long someone spends in the toilets. Like, there are as far as I'm concerned, there are two very different ways the world can go right now. And I think it's really important that the reason the book presents the data is to show companies that you can actually have a world where it works for the company, but also works for the employees. And that's what I'm really passionate about, because if we don't present that data and use that data, many companies are going to go down the other route. And although companies think that's good for them, I don't think it is. And I actually, from going back to the previous book, I actually don't think it's going to be good for their performance in the long run. So I suppose that's the other theme, is it uses the data to educate people that there is a choice, but we can only be aware of the choice if we educate ourselves, starting to reread things like 1984 or understanding how AI works and what that's actually going to mean.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Good and positively. Because we can get scared by AI, but make sure you listen to an AI podcast. Make sure you are reading up on what happened at number 10 with Elon Musk, I think, in the last few weeks. What happened between Rishi Sunak and where is the country going and all that kind of just, it's easy for right now for us to bury our heads in the sands, but we're all citizens. So let's understand it and contribute to where it can go, because if we get it right, on the flip, it can be really positive. AI can do loads of rubbish, crap stuff that we don't want to do.
Talk about freedom to do other things.
Yeah.
Freedom
to do all the things that we don't have to do, time to do, like keeping ourselves fit, going to the gym, all those types of things. But if we don't understand it, we won't be able to influence it. So I'd encourage everyone that's listening, just keep educating yourself on what's happening in that world. And it is scary because it's all new, but the more you learn about it, yes, there is all the doom predictions, but there's a way worse. If the AI predictions that AI is going to end the world come true, right? That's going to happen and we're going to be gone.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
But the worst one is in the middle where everyone's still here and we're totally enslaved. And
yeah,
I don't want to make that choice, right?
yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to make the choice between that. But if that is going to happen, that's going to happen, right? But there is a more likely scenario in the middle where AI just is there to just control people. So
Yeah.
I would just encourage everyone to just keep educating yourself on all of this wider area.
I mean, yeah, you make a really good point actually, because often there'll be people who organizations and individuals want to control for the sake of it, but they also others that do it because of fear of the unknown. So
Yes.
just don't make it the unknown.
Yeah.
Become familiar with it, and then actually use it. Kind of forget about the media headlines
Yeah.
and dive deeper. And yeah, that's the right way of doing it. Absolutely. And I like what you say about kind of, and also giving people the freedom to take the book and take
Yeah.
your podcast content and use it themselves.
Yeah.
Because then they're going to be more prepared for
Yeah.
stuff and less fearful about stuff, which means they can be more creative and
Yeah.
be more successful and happy.
And that we call that at the Happiness Index, we call that freedom to be human.
Yeah, nice.
And that's our description of what we see in the data.
Yeah.
And that once you get into that space and you see companies do it really well, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Because it can change people's lives. Like I'm probably similar to you, Chris, and my diary allows me a wide level of freedom and choice around how I parent. So I can make sure that I can be on the school run and all this kind of stuff. But it shouldn't just be business owners and people like that have got that choice, because the positive impacts for society are huge. Like for children to have both parents, like things like toxic masculinity are not made up. They are not things, they are a problem. But if you have both parents that can both parent and talk to children about this kind of stuff and all these subjects, and it's not the old-fashioned world that is split male and female, we can improve so many areas.
You're so right. I think it's generationally, it's really exciting seeing what's happening now.
Yeah.
And I think obviously, like with lots of things, COVID has just accelerated that.
Yeah.
Where we do have that, where we could say that previous generations, our parents, our grandparents weren't able to do that because, well, there's a certain direction they had to go down. But you can do both, and you got AI to help help you free up that time to do that.
But I have seen even if you go away from the data and you go from the school run I do, loads of the men have disappeared from the school run.
Yeah, it's true.
It is the reality that it suddenly loads of people you never seen on the school. And this isn't judging anyone, by the way, who doesn't do the school run. It is just a choice thing that I do think most parents, if they could and things can be arranged that way, they'd want to be on the school run.
Definitely.
It is stressful. It's a stressful part of my day. But what I get from it is the payoff is worth it.
Actually, I dropped a LinkedIn post today about coming here, and did a picture of the front cover on there, and mentioned that's one of the things I mentioned about what happiness is about kind of having that freedom to be able to do that kind of stuff, and that's really important. Goodness me, there's so much to unpack. But what's kind of going back to kind of what we were saying right at the beginning about happiness being fundamentally a business superpower.
Yeah,
you get it right. Bottom line, you're a successful business. So, what kind of final kind of thing would you say about the book and kind of what it says to readers?
So I'll also let's talk about a couple of traps to avoid them.
Okay, yeah.
Because happiness is a divisive word. People who get it just get it, and they're like, yeah, it makes complete sense that having happy employees is a no-brainer. But some people are the opposite. They're like, it's not my job. Why does it matter to me?
Yeah, classic.
And there's some quotes in the book of CEOs that have said that to me, and they're entitled to their opinion. But two of the traps that you can avoid, if you've gone on the journey, you've understood the business case for happiness, then you've had the research, and you're like, you know what, this guy called Matt and his team have got something here, and you're like, right, I want to start focusing on this. There's a couple of traps that we all fall into, and I've fallen into these. One is toxic positivity.
Okay, yeah.
And one is setting happiness targets. So let's go one at a time. Yeah. Toxic positivity is where you just tell everyone everything's good all the time. Even though there is an earthquake about to happen in your business, but nobody acknowledges it because they're supposed to only talk about the positive stuff.
Okay.
So, and this happens in this world where I just want to make a really subtle point on our company name, the Happiness Index. It's thehappinessindex.com, right? It's not the highhappinessindex.com.
Yeah.
You learn as much from sadness, unhappiness, anger, any emotion that you can name. You learn from all of these emotions, and they are data points to help you improve. However, if you start banning people feeling sad, feeling unhappy, you don't learn and improve. So the happiness index, the other part of the name is the word index.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because you learn as much from what makes people unhappy, because then you find out about that and you improve it, and the culture over time improves. Over time, you want the averages to go up. That's great. But if you ban unhappiness, I guarantee the only thing that will happen is people will become more unhappy.
It's true. You're stifling expression, aren't you? Yeah.
So I'd label that under toxic positivity.
Yeah, nice.
The second one is it's a quote. I think it's someone called Lovegood. But once a metric becomes a target, it ceases being a useful metric.
Okay.
And that's what happens with happiness. Because it's so metrics and data and numbers. People are like, yeah, I've heard about this happiness thing. We're now going to mandate happiness.
Yeah.
And
oh God, yeah.
We're both married. If I told my partner to be happy, I am only going to get one response.
Absolutely.
And it starts with an F.
Yeah, exactly.
And it ends with an off.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is because that is not how it works.
Yeah.
So what I mean by getting rid of targets but having metrics are really valuable when you look at it and go, why has that gone down? Why has that gone up? What can we learn from that? And again, this is something I said in the book, which is this will never go on my gravestone or be remembered for, because it's too long. It doesn't work. But you know the saying, if you can measure it, you can manage it.
Yeah.
I used to love that saying, but I think it's
same.
time for that to be retired. And this is what won't be remembered because it's too long, which is, if you can measure it, you can better understand it. If you can better understand it, on average, you will hopefully make better decisions than worse decisions.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
again,
nice.
that's not going to go on my gravestone because that is too long. But that's life, isn't it?
Yeah,
we were talking a lot about before off air about the importance of learning and trial and error and all this kind of stuff. That's why making it target doesn't work. And everyone gets really stressed out about it. And all our clients do it. They get the dashboard, they log in, they're seeing everything, and that's where they go. And our customer success team spend a lot of time trying to unpick that with people, because we're all like that. Like when you're driving a car, that thing that says 100 miles an hour is not a target.
It's true. Yeah.
Your heartbeat, getting your heartbeat up to whatever.
Yeah.
I don't measure my heartbeat, but I reckon 120 is probably too much.
Well, it's decent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, going some. Yeah.
But if ours is 120 now, whilst we're sitting here chilled, having a nice conversation, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So again, like your heartbeat or your the miles per hour in your car, don't make it a target.
You're right, actually, because then, goodness me, there's spin-offs from that, which is company socials, quiz nights. Not so, of course, there's a role for those, definitely, but you know, okay, let's chuck in some fun things into the office, because that's going to solve it. But those are just like sticking plasters that are maybe solving the wrong problem.
Yeah,
and that's why I like what you talk about your book in terms of having that great kind of see the viewpoint from yourself as an entrepreneur running the business for nearly 10 years. It's brilliant. Congrats. But having the massively robust data that you've got, but then also blending that with experts and academia as well, is really, really nice.
Yeah. And it's so important to peer review. The other thing that you touch on there is things like alcohol. Now, I haven't drunk for 4 years pretty much. I've drunk once in between for my brother's stag do. But business use alcohol quite a lot as a version of let's have fun, let's be happy, and so on. And I'm not anti-drinking, because even some of our clients like Fuller's, like pub chains, I'm still pro. If people want to do that, that's what they want to do it. But from a work perspective, there's a lot of companies I really think you need to review what people think culture and happiness, again, it goes to that fluffy thing. Like, as you said, it's like, oh, the quiz night or the Christmas party. That's not culture. They're all like the little activity things that you do, making feel someone joining your company and feeling safe to offer a new idea is culture.
Yeah.
It's not whether 100 people turn up. You invite 150 people to the Christmas party and 100 people turn up because HR have told them to go.
Yeah.
That's not culture.
Because actually then that will result in sometimes the exact opposite, because there's the pressure, like, but all these things going on in my rest of my life, and I've got to then come in for this. You see, I really love what you say, actually, because you've got, when you do things the right way and don't look at these tactical, sticking plasters, and actually the superpower is giving people the freedom to come up with ideas that they think maybe might be shot down, or saying, I'm not sure about this. I haven't got the answer. This isn't back in school where you have to get a certain percentage, have a certain percentage or get a certain grade. It's like, this is life. I don't know, but actually I think there's something in this. And that is such a superpower to be able to do that. But you're right, you need the right environment to be able for that to flourish in the best way.
Yeah. And all of it falls down if there's not the right environment, because a lot of the stuff in the book is being able to share emotions and how you feel and being able to improve things. But if you don't have the right environment, those people can be deemed troublemakers.
It's true.
People that are kicking off. So one of the things is like, it's really difficult because sometimes people hear the stuff and they're like, oh, great, I can apply all that at work. But actually there's a lot of work that needs to be done under the hood first, because there's a lot of companies out there that are not ready for that. And that's where going on a cultural journey, there's some starting points and ways that you go about it. Yeah,
definitely. Well, look, I mean, we could go on for longer, but it's been great chat. Really appreciate it. And thanks. I look forward to seeing you at the, actually, forgot to mention, sorry about that, before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
Of course, you had the conference which you launched your new book, which is great, but then I really like the idea, right, let's extend it for longer, to then get people into and turn it into something bigger than a book launch. But you've got a conference coming up as well, haven't you? In March, is that right?
Yeah, the March, April, we're just sorting the date.
Okay.
Long story short, the way that we explain the neuroscience is happiness is what your heart needs at work, and engagement is what your brain needs. And the book details that. The conference that we built off the book launch was about employee happiness. So it was about things like energetic connections, personal relationships, which is what your heart needs. For the next one, which we'll do a discount code for your listeners.
Good stuff. Cheers.
Is about what your brain needs. And sometimes people lump things, if you take purpose as an example, purpose is something your brain needs, which is related to direction. But sometimes people put that in the happiness bracket. They think, oh, okay, that's something to do with the heart, something to do with emotions. Whereas purpose is actually something related to direction and brain. Think of it like your sat nav. If your boss doesn't explain the purpose of why you are doing this, it's harder to do a good job. So we're going to come, the cover of that book there's got the brain and the heart. So we've covered the heart in the happiness conference, and now we're going to do an engagement conference. So we'll basically roll forward 2 a year. So every 6 months, we'll do one on happiness and one on engagement, and we'll keep repeating what we've learned and bringing people along on the journey.
That's great. Well, great stuff. I'm popping all sorts of links in the episode description for this, so people can find out more about the stuff that you guys do. They particularly listen to your podcast, get that book in their hands, and start doing more of what you're talking about.
Brilliant. And thanks for having me on, Chris. And keep up your good work.
Thank you, mate. Cheers. Thanks.